Good evening. A warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Children, Families and Education Select Committee. My name is Councillor Heena Makwana and I'm the chair of this committee. Details of the business can be considered today as shown on the agenda, copies of which are available in the room and also accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch any mobile devices to silent before the meeting starts, and when you are invited to speak, please ensure you turn your microphones on so that you could be heard in the recording. For those watching via YouTube, if you're so minded, you can complete one of our resident feedback forms. These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way that we run our meetings. Before we go through our agenda, I'd like to introduce colleagues in the room. So to my right, I have Councillors Gohill, Smallwood and Batt. To my left is Ryan Dell, Democratic Services Officer. And then I have Councillors Sweeting, Gill and Singh, and Mr. Tony Little, our co-opted member. Okay, great. Thank you all. Let's move on to item 1, which is apologies for absence. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, so we have apologies from Councillor Hagger with Councillor Gohill substituting, and we have apologies from Councillor Gyug with Councillor Singh substituting.
Okay, thank you to Councillors Gohill and to Councillor Singh as well for subbing. Item 2, declarations of interest in matters coming before this meeting. Are there any? No, great. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting, 19th of September. I think the committee would like to give thanks to Ryan for such fantastic minutes, very accurately recorded and very clear to read and understand. Thank you, Ryan. Agreed, thank you. Item 4, to confirm that the items of business marked as Part 1 will be considered in public and the items marked as Part 2 will be considered in private. There are no Part 2 items, so straight on to item 5, which is our topic selection. So just to recap then, at the last meeting we raised a number of possible review items. We now need to think about narrowing the selection into 1 or 2 particular areas to investigate further. So I'd like to just draw everyone's attention to the table 1 in the on page 16. So just looking at items 1 and 2, just to confirm that for the item 1, which is absenteeism in schools and related problems since COVID and its recovery, along with the statutory pathways, court system and social work, how social workers work with the legal system. For those 2 items, we've invited officers to attend. So hopefully at our next meeting in November, we'll have officers attending. So at least that will help us to kind of, flesh out whether it would be these 2 items would be good topics to review potentially. And then if we look at item 3, which is about improving our communication with schools, we think that this topic may need to be narrowed down further. So does anyone want to have any kind of discussion on that or any thoughts on that? Any ideas? Yeah, Mr. Little.
I think this is a topic that we did not very long ago. I wonder whether there's much needs to be said at this stage.
Okay, I think that it was mentioned at the last meeting, wasn't it? So I think that's why it's just been noted here. But if we think that it's either been explored recently or that it's too broad at this stage, perhaps we park it for now and then come back to it at a later stage if everybody feels... Okay, go on, Mr. Little, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, just my memory can be faulty on these things, so I'm sure Ryan will check afterwards.
All right, great. Councillor Sweeting, did you want to say it again?
I don't think we had a specific issue on this. It's just that it's come up in our major review when we were asking for comments from schools, and it was difficult. And it's come up in the review that we had last meeting on the safeguarding. There was an issue there that I particularly mentioned the difficulty. I think it's acknowledged that schools are very, very busy. I know we're all busy, but I think maybe that will be explored in maybe one of our major reviews as an adjunct to it, not as a specific. But I do think it's important that we do at least acknowledge that schools are very busy, but it would be really good if we had as good a communication with our schools as possible.
Okay, Councillor Smallwood.
Yeah, just to lead up with Councillor Sweeting's point, I think one of the challenges local authorities have probably faced across the United Kingdom is as we moved away from the local authorities being responsible for schooling and into academisation and trusts and all the other things, which personally I think have been great, one of the things that has been lost is that connection with the schools. And I'm not entirely sure we've ever spent time looking at what the impact of that is. Like, not that we're ignoring them. I don't think we are at all. And I think on the serious issues, the local authority takes it. But is there bits that have got a little bit lost away from the very serious things like safeguarding and safety? I am 100% confident we are doing a good job. But is there bits that are being lost? Is good practice being lost in being shared? My experience as a governor, that is one of the challenges that schools face. So I think maybe that could sort of a remit, since we've moved away from local authority school, or a majority of local authority schools, what challenges has that thrown up? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, anything else? Councillor Sweeting?
Just, I agree. Hesitation here, but I agree. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Batts.
Thank you, Chair. I did a bit of homework on youth justice, and I think that was quite a good kind of topic to look at.
Can we just pause one second, just wrap this one up, and then I'll come back to you if there's any other items. So perhaps maybe, Ryan, if we take this one away, so improving our communication with schools, and just see if we can kind of narrow it down as a potential option, so seek officer advice, I guess, based on what Councillors Smallwood and Sweeting have said. Okay, and then if we look at item 4, which is on that list, so impact on mainstream schools of additional SEND places, Councillor Sweeting.
It wasn't actually SEND places, it was the increase in SEND children in our mainstream schools, because the direction of travel from central government through the Green Paper and subsequent legislation is for more reliance, I think, on mainstream schools to accommodate categories of SEND children. And for some, that has been a challenge. And I think just looking at that would be maybe not a major review, but certainly comments coming from our schools on that would be a useful piece of information that would help, I think.
Okay, so as it says there, maybe it's a good one to review at a later date when we've got kind of our maybe SEND strategy in place, and where we've got our new places currently in the system. Perhaps we can then review it and see what's going on and get some feedback from our schools then. Okay, moving on to 5 and 6. Right, so Councillor Batts, number 5 was about youth justice systems.
Yes, sorry for jumping ahead earlier. I kind of had a look at some of the key issues facing local authorities and also just the country generally on youth justice, and I think it's broadly kind of split up into 3 areas in my view. So the first is prevention and early intervention. So what preventive and early intervention programs are in place for at-risk youth? How are young people and their families connected to these programs? And what evidence-based approaches are utilised in these interventions? The second sort of broad topic could be sort of diversion from the justice system. So how often are diversionary options such as cautions or community resolutions used instead of sort of formal prosecution? What criteria determines eligibility for diversionary options, and how are these outcomes evaluated? Looking at how council can collaborate with other stakeholders in this, so for example police, schools, social services, to address youth justice, and if there are any formal agreements or partnerships in place with other organisations. Then there's also restorative justice as well, so looking at how restorative justice practices are utilised and in what kind of context.
Okay, Mr. Little.
The heading in the paper refers to county lines, and drugs, I presume, is the intended link there rather than other forms of youth offending. And I take Councillors' points that this is a very broad topic, and very broad solutions relating to offending in general, and he's quite right in all he says. But if we are picking up on the drugs aspect of it, it would kind of narrow down some of those options that were raised in the previous comment. And I think the somewhat broader aspects are really quite interesting, and there's a danger to young people that the sort of management of them that's involved in drug gangs is also involved in other aspects of youth offending, such as theft and sexual exploitation. So maybe we're wrong to keep it as narrow as county lines. Maybe we do need to think about. I know you want to narrow topics rather than broaden them, but things that are similar might be considered together in that respect.
Okay, Councillor Batt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I completely agree with Mr. Little there. Actually, drugs is a really interesting point because I've seen, certainly in my ward and across the borough, there's been an increase in drug-related crime, especially with the youth. And I know that there's also been, in the news, there's been a lot about vaping as well, and the increased use of vaping by young people. I think just the points I mentioned earlier, perhaps we can look at those broader points within the context of a narrower sort of topic, such as drugs or vaping, and see how and test how the system currently works under the context of those specific issues.
Okay, Councillor Smallwood.
Chair, I apologise. We are talking about 5 and 6, aren't we? So I could speak about 6, or would you?
Just hold 5 and 6 on that one. Did you want to say anything on 5? No. Okay. All right. So perhaps for number 5, which was the youth justice system. So we've had quite good comments and feedback. So perhaps again we take that one away and explore it with officers and see, is there a potential review topic item here, given the feedback that we've just had. Yeah, Councillor Gill.
Just on that youth justice system and focusing on the drug issue with county lines, I think it fits in really well with number 1, absenteeism. Just on my experience in the classroom and schools, a lot of kids that have been involved with the county line are kids that don't go to school, and so there's a link there, and geographically we are bordering the counties going into Bucks as a borough, so there is that issue there. So I think 5 and 1, there is a link if we really want to narrow it down.
Okay, yeah, great, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to 6, which is children not in education / permanent exclusions. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. I was thinking about this yesterday quite a bit as I was in a school governing body meeting, and I just wondered, I think permanent exclusion is a really interesting one, and that's quite niche, but I was also thinking about, we have a large amount of children who are staying in hotels in the south of the borough, and I just wonder what we really mean by children not in education. Is this people fleeting in and out of it and doing that? And I wonder whether there was a bit of work whether we could really focus on that, because I'm assuming select committees up and down the country would have done work on permanent exclusions, and the children in Hillingdon are probably not going to be that different to the children up and there, so there's probably work and examples we could draw on. But we're probably quite unique in the amount of children who have come here potentially with their parents, whether it be on boats or planes or whatever it may be, that we still have a duty, a moral duty to educate, and what their experience and how the schools are coping with that as well. Difficult subject, but I think it certainly could be one that's quite powerful and actually quite unique to Hillingdon.
Councillor Sweeting.
I have mentioned this in the past with schools in my ward that, and neighbouring wards, that the numbers of children, that the turbulence that some schools are experiencing. I mean, I think it has settled a little. I mean, I'll just touch wood here on that one, but certainly on the admissions to secondary school from some of these youngsters, there has been some challenges on that because of the tightness of secondary places in certain parts of the borough. But some primaries have had up to 40 children that have come in and gone out quite quickly, and keeping a very close eye. I know we are good an authority in making certain that the children don't fall through the gaps. But it is a real challenge. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Little.
Yes, Chair. I would agree with the comments of the previous speaker in saying that there are, speaking as a governor of a secondary school in the bottom end of the borough, that there does tend to be a dispersion issue, that they are concentrated in certain schools. There's a second problem of churn, as mentioned, but there's also a third issue relating to the fact that they don't, if something is done to find them permanent homes, they don't stay in that school that they've been sent to. So there are real difficulties, and there doesn't seem to be any specialist expertise or good practice that can be readily exported from one school to another that would allow them to sort of fit this in easily. But that's the first point. The second is in relation to permanent exclusions. I think the issue there isn't about the causes of permanent exclusions. I mean, they're well known and common across the country. But what you've done with the kids who are permanently excluded, and whether or not we're providing them with an adequate education. It's a completely different problem from the one of the recent arrivals in the country. They're both problems, but they're very different problems.
Yeah, I agree. I think that perhaps we need to explore it, but if not, then at least if it doesn't become a review item, then perhaps we can ask for information on it. So it's actually really informative for us as a committee to understand exactly what happens with things like exclusions and things like with the children who are not in education. Councillor Small, did you indicate? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think something like permanent exclusions could be, we could have a panel on, we could take questions, they could present to us. You would hope that if there was something wrong there, somebody like Ofsted would pick that up. Well, I'd hope Ofsted would pick that up quite quickly, but we would be, I'd hope, I don't know the expert, I'm not an expert on this, but I think the council will have metrics to meet and be challenged. I still do think that this thing around children who are here, from foreign countries, who are staying in hotels or staying in temporary housing is a really interesting one. And actually I think it's different throughout the borough, because I think some of the northern schools have got one or two of these young people, which presents a different amount of challenges in a positive and a negative way to if you've got 30 or 40, right? Because if you've got 30 or 40, they've got a peer group who may speak the same language, who they may have travelled with, who they may see in the hotel, or you may send someone up to the north of the borough and they're on their own and they don't speak the language, and that's a challenge. So I think there is different challenges to the schools depending on what that is.
Mr. Little.
Sorry for coming back again. Two more points. One is picking up on Councillor Smallwood's. There is a real issue because of the circumstances of those children. Hotels are not homes, and the facilities that they might have in hotels to undertake a modern education may well be very limited in terms of access to computers, doing distance learning and all those sorts of issues. And a completely different aspect on the topic as listed, there's an issue with children not in education that's an aspect of absenteeism. It's kind of absenteeism, but a stage worse. They're kind of refusing to come to schools, or they go to school, but they don't participate in the school they've gone to. They're there in name only. And this is a post-COVID problem that's been amplified by those circumstances. So there are very real topics within here, but they probably need chopping and separating.
Yeah, I'd like to think that when the officer comes to our next meeting to discuss absenteeism with us, perhaps we can ask these questions and see if there's a connection or a link of some kind. And maybe that would help us to understand it a bit better. Councillor Gohill.
Thank you, Chairman. Chair Lady Kafala. I'm conscious I'm not a permanent member of this committee, but if you were looking into children not in education and permanent exclusions, I'd request that you look into the needs of children with EHC plans, so that's education, health and care plans, and whether the needs of those are being met, and specifically within the first part of that point, so children not in education, that might not necessarily mean they're excluded from school, but it could mean that for large parts of their education they might be suspended, or they might not be actually actively learning in school, and whether that could be explored as part of that scope.
Yeah, great, thank you. Councillor Sweeting.
Yes, thank you. That links very much really with point 4, which is the impact of mainstream schools on the increased numbers of SEND children. I mean, it's not only the impact of mainstream schools, it's impact on the children themselves and their families. So, you know, that could stretch out to include what you were discussing, Councillor Gohill. Thank you.
Okay, great. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Chair. I think we discussed actually really important topic. So I think the best way involve the officers and get the whole report. Then after that we can make further improvement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then items 7 to 10. So that is mental health, school standards, cyberbullying, mental health links, and social media mental health links. Comments there are that right now these are quite general, but has anyone else got any views or feedback on that? Councillor Sweeting.
I believe the Health Select Committee is looking at mental health as a major review, and it depends on what we choose as our review. That would link very much to the absenteeism. And I mean, we did talk some time ago, I think, about sometimes select committees sort of dovetailing on an issue that sort of includes both areas, and that would be quite an exciting development, that both select committees will have their sort of slightly different remit, but they will come together with recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Batten.
Thanks. I think with mental health, in terms of this particular committee's remit, perhaps it's we can look into sort of the accessibility of services. So how accessible are mental health services for the youth in our region, and what are the barriers to actually accessing those services? Also service effectiveness, so how effective current mental health programs and interventions are for the youth, what the outcomes are for youth who access these services, and also school-based interventions and how they exist for mental health and how effective they are, including sort of school counsellors and teachers, and how adequately they may be trained to deal and identify mental health issues.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Again, lots to explore. Any other comments? Councillor Sweeting.
I'm on number 8 now, is that okay? I mean, I don't think school standards is a general issue. It's an issue that we have a report. We will be having a report next year. We had a report last year, and there was the issue of, you know, the COVID generation in respect of the standards of our schools. So we could ask as an information item an officer's report on how our teams support schools in improving standards. I know that Councillor O'Brien at the meeting of council in September sort of mentioned all the teams, and it was detailed in the report that came. But it would be of interest, I think, to have, if you like, people coming in and explaining exactly how they are intervening to improve the standards of our schools. Thank you.
Yeah, again, with that, I agree. However, I'm mindful of officer time as well, so we need to respect that and think if they are already providing us with a report on school standards, and I don't want to kind of give them any more extra work, but I hear what you're saying, and I agree that it is something that we do need to keep an eye on and scrutinise where appropriate as well. Anything else on school standards? No. Cyberbullying, social media, again, it's come back as it's too broad at this stage. However, it's something we can just keep an eye on, and if in the future there is something we would like an information report on perhaps, or maybe as a future review topic item we can look at. So, okay, so we've had quite, I don't know if this helped Ryan in any way whatsoever, but at least we've got some more to go back to officers with, and hopefully at the next meeting we can try to narrow it down and possibly confirm what, at least one, if not two, then that's kind of where we're going with it. Yeah, Councillor Sweeting.
I'd just like to mention topic 1 again. This is obviously something very much in central government's eye line, and it would be good if we were sort of ahead of the curve, because there's been reports that come from the Department for Education, there's comments that have come from central government on this very issue, and I mean, it is a major problem. You've only just got to look at the statistics that you've got almost double the number of children that are absent now than were before COVID, and we're talking about over 1.5 million children that are considered to be absent from school. So it is a major issue, and it's something that the Department for Education, as well as the local government association, as well as the Conservative government, are very concerned about.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this? No? Okay, great. So we'll bring this item to a close. If we move on then to item 6, which is the Cabinet Forward Plan. Any comments or questions, Councillor Sweeting?
Thank you. We have coming to Cabinet this Thursday the proposed reduction in the standard number of a primary school, and I think this will be one of quite a few now that have come through to reduce their PAN. Now, some of the classrooms that are not going to be needed as class bases have been used very successfully, such as in Ruislip Gardens and Pinkwell, to support the SEND capacity. But this is sort of a bit piecemeal, and I was just wondering whether the council has thought about looking at this issue over the many of our, particularly primary schools. Schools will always use those class bases that they're not being needed as class bases for all sorts of very worthy things, but they could be used to support what the council is trying to deliver as well. We know this because of the community hubs that we had a consultation on, etc. And I was just wondering whether we could ask whether this is a possibility. The what if. Yes, they could be used. Schools that are having a reduction in their standard numbers, they could be used for all sorts of things within those schools, but maybe not. But with partnership with the school and the council, maybe those areas could be used to deliver activities that the community would find very useful. I know it's just an information point, but I thought I would sort of share that with you. And if I could go on, I'm not certain when the SEND strategy is actually coming to Cabinet. It's not coming to the this Thursday's meeting. It's 2 days away and it's not on the agenda. And if I can say that it was in November of last year that we had this, and there were a lot of issues that were outstanding from that report, and I was just looking at my, well-documented sort of comments. So is it going to come back to us with the amendments? Because I know that the consultation didn't have a great deal of take-up. I think there was only 2 head teachers that commented on it. Now, obviously, there's been a year going on and there's been other things happening. But seeing it's not going to Cabinet this Thursday, will it be coming back to us with these additional comments, or will it be coming to a later meeting of the Cabinet? in maybe November.
So as I understand it, it won't go to full Cabinet again because it already has, and it's just going to be a Cabinet member decision report now rather than a full Cabinet agenda item.
Okay, anything else on Cabinet Forward Plan? No? Okay, let's move on then to the work programme, item 7. So I'm going to pass you over to Ryan for this one. Thank you.
Okay, so this is just to highlight that we are planning to invite the Youth Council to a future meeting of the Select Committee when we have the 1 year down the line review of the youth offer and how that's going, which will be roughly October-ish next year. There's also on the forward plan something about DPS for alternative provision. I think we're going to add that to our work programme for November, so it's going to go to Cabinet. I think it's a week before our committee, so we'll ask officers to bring that to us as well. A couple of quick things. So we've got on the printout here is the final version of the recommendations of the Stronger Families Hub review. The only thing to note there is that number 1 and number 5 have been swapped around in terms of the ordering. And so what is now number 5, it's just added in to continue at the very start. So it now says to continue to raise awareness rather than just to raise awareness. And then just to ask members if they had any suggestions around possible site visits that they might want to undertake.
And you don't need to say it now if you haven't, not to put anyone on the spot, but if you've got any ideas, for sure, please share them. Yes, Councillor Batt.
Not so much of a site visit, but I think it was quite rewarding to kind of go into the Youth Parliament and the Youth Council last time and see them in action. I know that Councillor Gill and Sweeting joined me then, but perhaps we could arrange that again and show our support.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. Thank you. Mr. Little.
Off that topic and on the previous one, the findings and conclusion, the first line, this is a quibble, the committee concluded that overall the Stronger Families Hub was providing a good service. That overall kind of suggests a lack of confidence that I didn't think we felt at the time. I wonder whether, as a drafting amendment, we might just delete that word.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hadn't really thought about it like that, actually, until you've just raised it now, but I agree, actually. So it should read then, just to correct me, the committee concluded that the Stronger Families Hub was providing a good service. So just, in effect, to remove the word overall. Do we agree with that? Just to make it a bit of a stronger sentence then, I guess. Yeah. Is that okay, Ryan? Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Any questions, comments? Councillor Sweeting.
It's just looking at the work programme, how little information items there are. There's one on the Ukrainian children. I don't think we need to go further in that. I mean, I would have thought that we were given information and that was working reasonably well. And then the other one is school admission arrangements. Well, it's just for noting, really. I mean, we've got a school that's, reducing its standard number. We've got quite a few that targeted services for disadvantaged children to be confirmed, etc. There's also one that I'd like to suggest, and that is the issue around move-ins to our borough and how easy those move-ins are being able to be accommodated in secondary schools, because I know from quite a few conversations I've had with residents that have moved in how difficult they've found that exercise. So maybe we could just have a look at the spaces that are available and the areas where they're available. I know that we're not undertaking a new secondary school now. That was part of the programme going to Cabinet on Thursday. But there is an issue of move-ins, and I know that for one particular family, they were offered a school that was quite a significant, difficult journey away from where they lived. So maybe we could look at that, please.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else? No? Okay, great. So I believe that brings us to the end of our meeting. It was short and sweet, but very good. I think we had lots of discussion, so thank you all for your contributions. And I wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you.